Lisbon in the 1700s was the golden gateway to the world. With nearly 200,000 souls packed into its winding streets and sprawling hills, it stood as Europe's fourth largest city, trailing only London, Paris, and Naples. This was a place where Brazilian gold filled royal coffers, where spices from the Orient perfumed the air, and where the legacy of Vasco da Gama and the great navigators still echoed through every harbour bell and church tower. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring historic paintings, engravings, and prints of 18th century Lisbon to life, allowing us to shift perspective, change camera angles, and move through the same scenes in ways their original artists never could. We'll walk streets that no longer exist, stand before palaces that vanished in a single morning, and witness the catastrophe that ended an era. First, I want to talk about the river that made it all possible. The Tagus River in the mid-1700s was more than water. It was power made liquid. This view shows the harbour mouth crowded with hundreds of vessels at anchor. In the foreground, longboats ferry cargo from deep water ships to the stone quays. In the midground, three-masted galleons from Brazil ride heavy in the water, their holds packed with gold and sugar. In the background, the low hills of the city rise in layers of white buildings and red roofs. Every day brought new arrivals. Dutch traders bargained for Chinese porcelain shipped through Macau. English merchants inspected Brazilian tobacco. African sailors unloaded ivory from Angola. Portuguese stevedores hauled crates of cinnamon and pepper, their backs bent under loads worth more than a year's wages. The shouting never stopped. A dozen languages mixed in the salt air. The smell of tar and spices and fish created a signature scent travelers recognized miles before landfall. But danger lived here. Storms swept in from the Atlantic with little warning, snapping anchor cables and driving ships onto rocks. Disease arrived on every ship. Yellow fever and plague traveled the trade routes as reliably as silk and gold. When epidemics struck, the harbour became a graveyard of quarantined vessels. The Tagus mattered because it connected this small corner of Europe to the entire globe. The wealth flowing through this harbour funded everything. The royal court, the church construction, the military, all depended on these arriving ships. The harbour survived the 1755 earthquake, though the tsunami that followed reshaped the shoreline and destroyed every dock. When Reconstruction came, engineers transformed the old landing areas into the grand waterfront plaza we'll visit later. Today the Tagus remains Lisbon's defining feature, though cruise ships have replaced the treasure galleons. This is the Ribeira Palace, rising directly from the waterfront. By the 1740s, this sprawling complex had served as the royal residence for over 200 years. Every king added wings and towers until the palace stretched along the entire waterfront square. In the foreground, the massive Terreiro do Pau shows ships unloading precious cargoes. In the midground, the palace fade displays hundreds of windows. In the background, interior courtyards spread behind the river facing walls. Inside, the palace held treasures beyond counting. The royal library contained over 70,000 volumes. Picture galleries displayed works by Titian, Rubens, and Correggio. The archives stored the Roteiros, secret navigation charts showing routes to the Indies, guarded like military intelligence. King Juvi had spent a fortune turning his residence into a statement of power rivaling Versailles. Daily life meant constant ceremony. Court officials in elaborate dress moved through halls hung with tapestries. Clerks tracked the empire's accounts, recording arriving gold shipments and pepper prices. The king held audiences where supplicants approached with elaborate protocol. The smell of wood fires and expensive perfumes filled the spaces. But the palace bred resentment. The cost strained even Brazil's gold production. Foreign ambassadors noted the contrast between royal splendour and surrounding poverty. The concentration of Portugal's power in one building meant everything depended on its survival. Then came November 1st, 1755. The earthquake struck at 9:40 in the morning. The shaking brought down walls and towers. The tsunami swept through lower floors. Fire consumed the ruins for 5 days. When smoke cleared, not one intact room remained. The loss was total. The library burned completely. The paintings turned to ash, the secret charts disappeared. King Jos I, traumatized, refused to ever sleep inside stone walls again. Today, nothing of the Ribeira Palace remains. The site became the Prado Commercio, the vast square that now defines Lisbon's waterfront. This view shows the Rocio, the heart of public Lisbon. The square had served as the city's gathering place since medieval times. Elegant townhouses enclosed three sides. In the foreground, market stalls crowd around the central fountain. In the midground, sedan chairs thread through crowds. In the background, the Carmo convent rises on the hilltop. The Rocio never slept. Before dawn, farmers arrived with vegetables and chickens. Fish sellers shouted their wares. Servants filled water jugs. Scribes wrote letters for the illiterate. Street performers juggled for coins. Food vendors grilled sardines, the smoke mixing with smells of unwashed bodies and horse manure. The noise created a constant roar. But the Rocio witnessed horror. This square served as the stage for the Inquisition's auto da fe ceremonies. The accused wore yellow sanbenitos marked with red crosses. Those condemned were burned alive while thousands watched. The stench carried across half the city. The Inquisition poisoned intellectual life. Books were censored. Foreign ideas entered like contraband. While Paris coffeehouses buzzed with Enlightenment debate, Lisbon's thinkers watched their words. The square mattered as Lisbon's social and economic heart. Prices were set here. News arrived here first. The 1755 earthquake brought down surrounding buildings. Pombal's engineers redesigned the Rocio with wider spaces and earthquake-resistant construction. Today, the same square functions as Lisbon's meeting point, now paved with black and white wave-pattern stones, the Inquisition headquarters replaced by the National Theatre. This is the Alfama district, cascading down the hillside below São Jorge Castle. By the 1700s, this labyrinth had existed nearly 1,000 years. Whitewashed houses rose 3 or 4 stories, their walls nearly touching across narrow passages. In the foreground, women wash clothes. In the midground, tangled roof lines create chaotic geometry. In the background, castle walls crown the hill. Life happened in the streets, fishermen's wives mended nets. Children played in tiny squares. Laundry hung from every window. The Verinas, fishwives, carried baskets of sardines on their heads, singing out prices in rhythmic calls. The smell of grilling fish mixed with wood smoke and sewage. Water defined daily hardship. No houses had running water. Women made multiple trips to public fountains, carrying heavy jugs up exhausting slopes. The Gallegos, water carriers from Galicia, hauled barrels to those who could pay. Danger came from density. Fire could spread house to house in minutes. Disease flourished. The steep slopes turned deadly slick. Crime thrived in the maze. The Alfama mattered because it housed the working poor who made Lisbon function. The stevedores, fishermen, servants, craftsmen. Without them, the palaces would be empty shells. The Alfama survived the 1755 earthquake largely intact. Its bedrock foundation and low medieval construction proved more resilient than newer buildings. Today, this district survives as Lisbon's oldest neighbourhood, little altered from the 1700s. One of the rare places where you can walk the exact paths 18th century Lisboetas walked. This view shows the Jernimus Monastery in Belm, 3 miles west of central Lisbon. By the 1700s, this magnificent structure was already 200 years old, built with the pepper tax, 5% of India trade profits. The Manueline style covered the fade with carved stone ropes, coral and maritime symbols. In the foreground, fishing boats rest on the beach. In the midground, the monastery stretches along the shore. In the background, the Tagus opens toward the Atlantic. Sailors visited before departing on 3-year voyages, kneeling to pray for safe passage. Those who returned gave thanks. Monks maintained the library and archives. The air inside smelled of incense and cold stone. Outside, shipwrights worked on vessels. Nearby stood the Belm Tower, built in 1519 as a fortress. It was both symbol and prison. In underground cells flooded by tides, political prisoners suffered in darkness. This area embodied Portugal's age of discovery. Vasco da Gama prayed here before sailing to India in 1497. Every great expedition success was celebrated in this church. The 1755 earthquake damaged Belm far less than central Lisbon. The monastery's massive construction held. The royal family, attending mass here that morning, escaped the catastrophe that killed tens of thousands in the city. Today, both the Journemos Monastery and Belm Tower survive as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, and you can visit these exact buildings where explorers knelt before venturing into the unknown. This is the Carmo convent overlooking the Rossio. Built starting in 1389, by the 1700s this ranked among Lisbon's most important religious houses. The church's pointed Gothic arches soared high. In the foreground, steep streets climb toward the convent. In the midground, the fade shows its rose window. In the background, convent buildings spread behind the church. The nuns followed a strict schedule beginning before dawn. Their voices singing canonical hours echoed through corridors. Wealthy families placed daughters here with substantial dowries. The library held rare manuscripts. Gardens provided vegetables and herbs. The interior stayed cold year-round. Life meant harsh conditions. Winters were brutal in unheated dormitories. Illness spread quickly. Some nuns entered unwillingly. Discipline for rule-breaking could be severe. The convent mattered as a centre of prayer and repository of wealth. The nuns' prayers were believed to protect the city. Then, November 1st, 1755 arrived. All Saints' Day Mass packed the church. When the earthquake struck, the vaulted roof collapsed. Hundreds died instantly. Fire consumed what remained. The ruins were never rebuilt. They stand today exactly as they were left in 1755, deliberately preserved as a memorial, and you can visit this haunting space where the vanished roof frames only sky. This view shows the Guas Livres Aqueduct, begun in 1731 under King Ju V. The design carried fresh water over 9 miles from Sintra Springs. The Alcantara Valley section featured arches rising 213 feet, the tallest stone arches built anywhere at that time. In the foreground, the valley floor shows scattered buildings. In the midground, soaring arches cross the valley. In the background, Lisbon's hills spread. Construction was dangerous. Workers fell from enormous heights. The project employed hundreds for over a decade. The cost drained the treasury, even as Brazilian gold continued arriving. When completed in 1748, clean water flowed to new public fountains. Women no longer walked miles to springs. The fountains became social centres. The engineering impressed foreign visitors. The aqueduct mattered because it solved Lisbon's water crisis and demonstrated Portugal's ambition to match Roman achievements. The 1755 earthquake tested the builders' work. While the city collapsed, the aqueduct stood unshaken. Not a single arch fell. Water continued flowing, crucial for fighting fires. Today, the Guas Livres Aqueduct still dominates the Alcantara Valley. Its arches as impressive as when completed nearly 3 centuries ago, still carrying water. November 1, 1755 began as a holy day. All Saints' Day Mass filled every church. At 9:40 am, the earth began to move. This was not a brief tremor. Modern estimates place it between 8.5 and 9.0 on the Richter scale. The shaking lasted 6 minutes. In those 6 minutes, centuries of construction came down. Heavy stone churches became death traps. The Carmo roof collapsed on hundreds. The cathedral's vaults fell. In narrow medieval streets, buildings toppled into each other. The noise was overwhelming, stone crashing, timber snapping, people screaming. Survivors ran for open space. Thousands fled to the riverfront plaza. They watched their city crumble, saw dust clouds rising, heard ongoing destruction. They thought the worst had passed. Then the river behaved strangely. The water pulled back, exposing the harbour bottom. The tide disappeared. 40 minutes after the shaking stopped, the tsunami arrived. A wall of water 20 to 30 feet high raced up the Tagus. It smashed into the waterfront with crushing force, drowning thousands who had gathered there. When the first wave pulled back, 2 more waves struck. But destruction wasn't complete. Those thousands of candles had fallen into wooden ruins. Within an hour, fires merged into a firestorm. Water systems were destroyed. The fire raged for 5 full days. The statistics are staggering. Out of 200,000 residents, between 30,000 and 60,000 died. 85% of buildings were destroyed. The palace, gone. The library's 70,000 books, ashes. Paintings by masters, burned. Secret navigation charts, lost forever. The disaster's impact extended across Europe. Philosophers debated the meaning. How could God allow such destruction on a holy day to a devoutly Catholic city? Voltaire wrote questioning divine benevolence. The earthquake became a watershed in European thought, accelerating Enlightenment questioning. Today, the memory of November 3rd, 1755 remains deeply embedded in Portuguese consciousness, marking not just disaster, but the end of one age and the beginning of another. This view shows the Marquês de Pombal, King Jos I's Prime Minister, the man who rebuilt Lisbon. When asked what should be done, he replied, "Bury the dead and feed the living." Pombal was a man of the Enlightenment. He saw the catastrophe as a chance to sweep away medieval Lisbon and build a rational, modern capital. He moved with remarkable speed. He organized burial of thousands, preventing disease. He established food supply lines. He prevented looting. He surveyed damage and made a shocking decision. He would ignore all previous property lines and rebuild according to a completely new plan. His vision was the Baixa Pombalina. Engineers designed a grid of wide, straight streets. The streets would allow carriages to pass easily and light to reach every building. Buildings followed standardized designs with uniform heights. Most revolutionary were earthquake-resistant techniques. He ordered development of the Gaiola Pombalina, a flexible wooden frame built into masonry walls. The wooden lattice could flex during tremors without collapsing. To test designs, he had soldiers march around building models, simulating seismic waves. He standardized production to speed rebuilding. The azulejo tiles covering Lisbon today were mass-produced under his orders. Within a few years, the new Baixa was rising, its rational grid replacing the medieval tangle. The centerpiece was the Praça do Comércio, built where the palace stood. By naming it Commerce Square rather than Royal Square, Pombal sent a message about Portugal's future. The yellow arcaded buildings created uniform elegance. The Rua Augusta Arch served as a ceremonial gateway. In the center, a bronze statue showed the king's horse trampling snakes, order triumphing over chaos. Pombal's vision extended beyond architecture. He broke the church's traditional authority. He expelled the Jesuits in 1759. He reformed education. He was an enlightened despot, building the future without concern for objections. The Reconstruction took decades, but when complete, Lisbon had transformed from a medieval city into one of Europe's first examples of Enlightenment urban planning. Today, the Baixa Pombalina remains the heart of downtown Lisbon, its grid still functioning as designed nearly 3 centuries ago. Walking through Lisbon today, the 18th century feels remarkably close. The Praça do Comércio stretches as Pombal envisioned. The Alfama's streets follow the same paths they did before the earthquake. The Belm Tower stands where sailors prayed. The Carmo ruins frame the sky as they have since 1755. The 1700s saw Lisbon rise to heights of wealth few cities have matched, then fall to depths few have survived. It was a century of extremes. Brazilian gold versus Alfama poverty. Palace splendor versus Inquisition horror. Human engineering triumph versus nature's humbling power. What remains is a city that refused to die. Pombal's reconstruction didn't just rebuild buildings, it rebuilt identity. Modern Lisbon carries both memory of what was lost and pride in what was created from ruins. The story of 18th century Lisbon reminds us that no matter how permanent power seems, nature can erase it overnight. It also reminds us that from even the worst disasters, humans can build something new and enduring. If there's another city, another moment in history, or another scene you'd like me to reconstruct and explore with AI, let me know in the comments below. The past is waiting. Again, thank you so much.